Welcome to this very first episode of Stand Up for Doctors. I'm your host, Kim Downey. Thank you very much for joining us today. I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome as my first guest, Dr. Todd Otten. I was privileged to be the first guest on the podcast Todd shares with his co-author and prior patient, Joshua Judy, and I love that today I have the opportunity to reciprocate. I'm looking forward to having Joshua on at another time when his schedule allows. Todd describes himself as a husband, father, family physician, co-author of Ripple of Change, serial entrepreneur, and a fierce advocate for patients and healthcare providers, which we share in common. I'm a fierce advocate for physicians. And I would describe Todd as smart, kind, funny, fun, reliable, efficient, honest, real, and easy to talk to. In this episode, we're going to be touching on three topics: making meaningful connections, what is a ripple of change all about, what is medicine forward, and why should you care? So thanks for joining me today, Todd.
Absolutely, Kim. I was excited to be here, and I look forward to having the conversation.
This is great. Well, what would you most like our audience to know about you as we begin our conversation?
Well, I'm flattered by those kind words to start. I very much appreciate that. And maybe I'll have you connect with my wife to. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Uh, no, I think the thing I would want the audience to know the most is, I'm a real person. I'm a human being. I have feelings. I have emotions. I have needs. I have wants. Successes, failures, all that kind of stuff. And that's in addition to being a physician. And I think in part that's why I really loved my job when I was seeing patients is just the combination of those things. It was a blast, and I do miss it a little bit, and maybe I'll come back, wink wink, and do it part-time. We'll see. But yeah, just I'm a real person like everyone else, wear my heart on
Hmm.
my sleeve.
Absolutely. Well, as we lead into making our talking about our first topic, which is making meaningful connections, I took a trip down memory lane all the way back to June 28th to revisit how you and I first connected. How it all began was June 28th at 9:06. I sent you a connection request, and all I said was we share some mutual connections. And 2 minutes later, you responded, Kim, nice to meet you. I'm spreading the word on our new book, Ripple of Change, and you shared a paragraph about the book. So within that 1 minute, I must have gone to bed because I didn't respond till like 8:58 the next morning. And I said, nice to meet you too. Thanks. I'll check it out. And I told you I was having a difficult time making inroads with my large local healthcare system. And I said I'd tag you in a gratitude post to physicians I had just had published on Kevin MD. And 2 minutes later, you said, sounds good and thank you. Let's stay in touch. The issues are ubiquitous. Then we proceeded to go back and forth for the next half hour, getting to know each other a little, talking about the issues. And during that time was when I actually offered you your first connection suggestion. Do you remember who it was?
Was it Michael?
No, but that was probably the second one. It was Paul DeChant.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Now
And
that
I
you
think
say
it's because
that,
I
for
told
sure,
you about our healthcare system,
for
right? So
sure.
I had suggested, so that was he was the first one I suggested that you connect with. So then a couple days later, you had sent me the video that you had on your quadruple aim website. And 2 days later, I told you I watched the video. It resonated with me 100%. I'm in full alignment with your mission. Perhaps we can Zoom sometime. And 1 minute later, you said that would be great. Happy 4th. You shared your contact information. And by July 6th, we made it happen. We had a Zoom.
Well, and look at now. I mean, holy smokes, the amount of ripples, if you will, from that initial connection is tremendous at this point.
Well, yeah. So actually, I was wondering also, do you have any idea of how many mutual connections you and I share at this point?
Oh my goodness, I bet it's a lot. Oh boy, let me do some quick math here and think about that. 500 maybe? Is it 500?
Actually, not quite. Over the weekend, it was 394, and I just checked 15 minutes ago, and it was 411. So just
That's
in the last few days, we've added like 17 mutual
uh,
connections.
let's give it a couple days, right? Let's see where we're
Yeah, then we'll get up
at.
to 500. So I would like you to share your perspective about making meaningful connections on LinkedIn and how it's enriched your life.
100%. It's interesting. Relationships are so important in terms of not just from a personal level, but also a professional level. I went to a conference in Atlanta with Intense Health Strategies, and it was on relational leadership, and I learned a lot, and it was great. And I think it speaks to the power of that relationship, right? I go back to how Joshua and I wrote the book together. It went from doctor patient to really becoming very good friends and writing a lengthy book, if you will.
Mhm.
And then to circle back though, in terms of LinkedIn, that's been a very powerful tool for me. And I hadn't been on it till probably 6 months ago, plus or minus, I guess.
Mhm.
And actually, my interaction with with you rather, showed me how much traction you can get beyond your normal circle. Um, we speak of Paul Dechant, and I had the opportunity to cross paths with him a couple times. I've chatted with Michael Hirsch, and then the list
Mhm.
goes on and on and on of colleagues that I've now talked to who are in alignment with what we want to do in terms of improving the healthcare landscape. And had I not gotten onto LinkedIn, we probably never would have met. And a lot of the other dominoes that have fallen as a
Mhm.
result wouldn't have happened. So I'm a big fan of LinkedIn. Um, Got to set some limits, for the social media,
Mhm.
right? But
Mhm.
in terms of connectivity, it's been absolute blessing for sure.
Yeah, I would agree with you 100%. And I loved collaborating on the recent group of Kevin MD articles with a dozen physicians, including you, and then witnessing the connections blossom between those of you who hadn't known each other prior. Because now even the 12 of you, I think, have gotten the ones that didn't know each other. Have gotten in to see you guys commenting on each other's posts and supporting each other. That's just been beautiful to witness as well.
100%. And that speaks to the power of positivity too. I think all too often in today's society, there's a want to focus on the negativity, and we need to reverse that. We need to go the other direction. There's so many things going on in the world that are frustrating and can bring you down. To have these little pockets of positivity are just so uplifting. They fill you up. I mean, it makes me
Mhm.
want to keep going forward and trying to improve things in healthcare. And the other component to that is, I think, these connections are helping break down some of the silos that exist, and it's empowering people to maybe take a calculated risk in their own circumstance that they might not have done otherwise because they feel supported by their peers. So that's an offshoot of it, which is just fantastic.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Yeah, I would agree with that. Okay, well, that's great. So here's to making connections
For
and many
sure.
more.
Yeah, absolutely. We gotta get our let's see, we'll have to have some milestones. Maybe we'll do some
Yeah.
celebratory things. We hit
Okay.
500 and a
Let me guess. Yeah.
thousand. There you
There you
go.
go. Okay. Well, the next thing I wanted to talk about is the book that you and Joshua Judy wrote together, Ripple of Change. So I'd like you to tell us about it in a nutshell. You could answer to like, what do you mean by Ripple of Change? Why did you write the book? And if you could share a takeaway for doctors and a takeaway for patients.
For sure. So why I wrote the book is there's really three components to that. I would say the first is me going through burnout was part of it. Unfortunately, I've lost three of my colleagues to suicide, and then just the frustrations I witnessed with patients on a daily basis when I was still actively practicing. It just got so frustrating that I felt I could take my energy and my voice and talent, I suppose, in a different direction to try and help people on a larger scale. So ultimately, what Joshua and I were trying to do with the book was really to inspire and empower an army of positive disruptors. We feel that if everybody takes a little piece and says, you know what, I can spend some energy there, or I can use my talent in this capacity, or maybe you just want to donate to a cause, that is doing those things. Then that's another way. And we feel like if not just thousands of people trying to move the needle, but of millions of people trying to move the needle, we're going to really start to see some change. It's going to get noisy if you have several million people saying the exact same thing, such as "I don't like prior authorizations,"
Mhm.
uh,
Mhm.
and that'll create some buzz. So perhaps a little bit of foreshadowing. We'll see on that one. But yeah, in terms of some takeaways, for doctors and patients, if you will, the book is loaded with nuggets, in my opinion. And of course, I'm biased. I was one of the
Mhm.
co-authors, right?
No,
So,
I would agree, and I've read it.
thank you, Kim. But we tried to we set the book up so that there was just all kinds of little things you could take away. Okay. The overarching theme is what we call our quadruple aim, which is very similar to the quintuple aim. And we try to make it as simple as possible in terms of what can we offer, whether it's a patient, whether it's a healthcare administrator, whether it's a clinician, whether it's a physician, nurse, whatever. Something that they could take away and say, you know what, this is a pretty simple tool or a lens I can use. And so the four components are patient experience, quality care, lower costs, and you could say we used provider wellness, but perhaps you could switch that to clinician or um, physician or whatever other word you want to use, right?
Healthcare worker, yeah.
Absolutely. But the point of that is when you make decisions and you take those four tenets and to keep them in perspective, rather, um, magic can be made, and I've lived that. One of the chapters I talk about it a bit is called Office Utopia in the book, and we only had 6 exam rooms, as I've said, for 4 providers, which is obviously a bottleneck, but it was
Right.
magical, and we made it work, and the retention was super high. We hardly lost any staff in the time we were there. But back to the what can providers take away? I think you gotta take care of yourself, or clinicians, you gotta take care of yourself. If you're not well and rested and in a good place, you are not giving your patients your best. And that requires balance, that requires mindset, that requires the capacity to say no, which many of us, frankly, didn't really learn in medical school. We just learned to say yes and do more, and to many's detriment. So take care of yourself. To my colleagues, please, please, please. Lots of resources out there, lots of help. Um, in terms of patients, I think take ownership of your situation. Um, don't
Mhm.
just accept what you've been given or what you've been told. Ask questions. Challenge the status quo. Do your research. Be prepared for your appointments. Write notes. All those kinds of things. And along the lines of what Kim does, thank your provider.
Mhm.
Ask how they're doing. I guarantee you, if you do that, they're gonna stop looking at their keyboard. All right, maybe not
Mhm.
everyone, but
Mhm. Yeah.
95% of clinicians would stop looking at their keyboard, look up, and it would reset the moment. Um,
Mhm.
so there you go.
Absolutely. All that was excellent. Excellent suggestions. Thank you. So of course I read your book, and I had sent you and Joshua a couple pages of notes, from the book before the three of us zoomed. And one of the things I had told you was that I loved the patient jokes that you had sprinkled in the book.
Yep.
And I said I always tried to have a sense of humor and a good time with my patients as well. And I haven't actually introduced myself, so I'm a physical therapist by trade. And I was wondering if you had a favorite joke, like from the book, or one that didn't make it to the book that's clean enough to share here.
There's a few. I think one that comes to mind from the book um, was I was normally I ran maybe 15 to 20 minutes late when I was seeing patients on average, which frankly is not too bad. And I kind of
Mhm,
took some pride in that, to be honest with you. And so over the years or decade, if you will, patients kind of got used to that number. Like, we're not going to be waiting too long for him. It's going to be about
mhm.
15, 20 minutes maybe. And I remember I was seeing a patient, his name's Gary, taking care of him for a long time. And I was probably half an hour behind. And I walked in and I said, "Hey, Gary, sorry to keep you waiting. I apologize. Oh, I really like your beard, by the way." And Gary responds, "That's great. I didn't have it when I got here." I just started laughing so hard. Oh, we had such a good visit.
Oh, that's
But
funny.
Yeah,
What's
yeah.
funny, I had a joke I almost shared with a doctor, but I didn't. I had a recent visit with a doctor who hadn't seen me in several years, so he didn't know about any of my complicated history. So it was a lot to take in, and it kind of had an impact on, what he needed to do. So totally understandably, he was on the EMR most of the time, typing away with all the things that have happened to me right over the past few years. So I'd say 11 out of the 15 minutes we were together, he was, pretty much on the computer. And at one point, I almost said to him, "Are you on LinkedIn?" But I didn't know if
Oh,
he was
that would have been
joking
that
type,
could
so I kept that
that
to
could
myself.
that could have been taken 2 ways for sure.
Right.
That could have gone either direction there. But actually, you gave me a thought, Kim. One of the things, I had mentioned for patients being prepared, you know, one of the things that I really came to appreciate over time because of the silos that exist with healthcare data, when patients would come in with a synopsis of
Mhm,
their care,
mhm.
like a one pager, if you will, that was often gold, especially if it was put together in a thoughtful manner and it wasn't just scattered thoughts. So it's something to consider there as well.
Actually, that's a huge point because I had done that for when I had to switch a few doctors, and they thanked me and said every patient should do that. And but unfortunately, I had brought it to this office, and they hadn't gotten it to the people that needed it. So yeah, so I guess you have to maybe walk in with it that day yourself to make sure it doesn't get lost in the
Yes, that's
translation.
exactly what you should do so it doesn't go through the paperwork trail and get faxed to somewhere else in La La Land.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but yeah, when I've taken my father in recently for a few visits, and I've prepared for the visits with a short outline, and I either
Hmm.
got it to them well in advance so the doctor could see it, or as we were checking, I said, "Can you please hand this to the doctor
Hmm.
specifically?" And they've
Yeah,
been very appreciative of that.
yeah. Well, that's great. Well, actually, and I'll share since you've got some kids at home, I'll share a joke that you could share with your kids. My friend sends me a joke every Friday. What did the science book say to the math book?
I don't know. I'm terrible at these things.
You've got problems. That's a good dad joke, right?
Oh, yeah, well, that's a great dad joke. Yeah, the kids. There's a certain age where the dad jokes start to wane a little bit. And my wife Angie, I'm not sure she appreciates most of them, but I still say them anyways. The kids usually
Well,
laugh.
there's another one to add to your repertoire.
Yeah, I like that. I like that one.
So a couple other things from your book is one was your story, The Bird. That was very, very powerful. Now, I don't want to talk too much about it because I don't want to give it away unless there was just a sentence or two you wanted to say to speak to it, not about it, because it is a true story that kind of changed your life. And anybody, I don't think nobody could read it without being moved.
Oh wow. I that's a yeah. Um Even just reminiscing back on that essay, um a lot of emotion. I wrote that when I was in high school, and I think it was the only true A I got. And
Hmm.
actually my teacher, who was my track coach, um read it to the class, which I was really just taken aback by that. But then, this was, what, geez, 30 years ago or whatever. So it had gone missing, if you will. I
Oh,
didn't know where it was, and I knew I had a copy somewhere. And as I was writing the book, Angie had strategically placed some papers for me to go through so that I could no longer ignore them. And I started going through them, and sure enough, it was in there, and it was
wow.
meant to be found and meant to be shared. And I'm glad it had an impact on you as well.
Yeah, it definitely did. So, yeah, we haven't held up the book yet, but Ripple of Change, get yourself a copy. Okay, and then actually at the end of my 2 pages of notes that I sent you, I actually wrote in the notes that at some point I stopped taking notes because I could relate to the entire book as both a healthcare professional and as a patient, 100%. And I said that I've, lived a nightmare that is our healthcare system on both sides, and it's not all a nightmare. There's wonderful and beautiful things, right? I've had, great experiences and terrible experiences, but it's all in the book.
Well,
So,
thank you, Kim, and I'll give you the info where to get it. It's www.ourquadrupleaim.com. And then it's, oh man, a bird just flew into the window.
Oh, geez.
Literally. Anyways,
I
so
heard
our
it.
ourquadrupleaim.com. But it's also on Amazon, it's on Google Play, and it's also on Barnes and Nobles as well.
Okay, thank you, Todd. I appreciate that. The last thing we were going to briefly talk about is medicine forward, considering it's so important and you're a key player, uniquely positioned to tell our audience about it. So, in just a minute or so, what is medicine forward and why should we care? And what's a takeaway for doctors and patients about medicine forward?
Absolutely. So, Medicine Forward was founded about 4 years ago, um, with Eric Topol, who's a very prominent physician leader and has several books out on the market. Gabe Charbonneau, one of my friends, was also one of the co-founders. And initially, it was a grassroots physician-led organization to really try and transform healthcare in positive ways. Um, Probably overly oversimplifying a little bit. Since I've been involved in the past 4 to 5 months, it's been very exciting. We've seen a lot of traction with our colleagues joining, as well as additional healthcare change agents, such as yourself, who are wanting to amplify the message of positive change, which is obviously desperately needed in many capacities and circumstances in our current landscape. And so we're looking to continue that move. Well, I guess I'll use a pun, move medicine forward even more,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, by getting even more people onboarded, growing the voice, working on collaboration, working on amplifying those voices for positive change. And so it's a great way for physicians to collaborate and use their talent, time, or treasure in one of those capacities beyond just connecting on LinkedIn. If perfect example would be, say you're super busy as a physician and you don't have the time or capacity to do some of the altruistic things that you want to do, make a donation to a group like Medicine Forward. $5, $10. It helps supports
Mm-hmm.
the infrastructure. We're gonna hopefully get some clerical staff and administrative staff onboarded to help support these endeavors to really try and make some change. Um, and ultimately, what I think would be beautiful is if we could incorporate even more of the patient's voice in conjunction with the physicians. Um, so stay tuned on that one because I think it would be very powerful if we had, like I said, millions of people having a similar message being shouted out to the world.
Yeah, no, it's great. I really enjoyed becoming involved and tell people how they can find out more about Medicine Forward.
Yeah, and it's easy. www.medicineforward.org.
Okay. Sounds good. So as we wind down the discussion, would you share something that brings you joy and a best tip for your colleagues?
Yeah, something that brings me joy is spending time with my family. Um, whether it's with Angie, my wife of, got to do some quick math, 22 years, or being with my children. I love watching my children in sporting events and spending time with them, playing board games. We were just in Dayton, seeing my oldest run cross country, and we stopped in a bookstore and I played a game of chess with my 12-year-old. Um, and that's just, you don't get those moments back.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and frankly, that's probably a tip for my colleagues too. You
Mm-hmm.
know, remember balance, remember to take care of yourself, remember to spend time with your family, prioritize, all those kinds of things. And if and when you need help, there's lots of help out there. There's lots of opportunity for on LinkedIn. Medicine Forward's also a good resource as well. So don't hesitate to reach out to any one of us, and we would try and point you in the right direction if we can't help ourselves.
Absolutely. Thank you, Todd. Was there anything else you wanted to share with our audience or how listeners can get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I can't state how important it is that the book was co-authored, and I'll show a little symbol with one of my patients, speaking to the power of the doctor-patient relationship, um, and how we need to elevate that even more going forward. In terms of getting in touch with me, obviously our website's a wonderful way. Emails on there, but I'm also on LinkedIn, quite active on LinkedIn. I have a Facebook account, Twitter account as well.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Todd. So, in closing, to move the needle in healthcare, we all need to use our voices and we all need to care about each other. We already know that doctors need to care about patients. Well, patients need to care about doctors too. So, stand up, doctors, and let's stand up for doctors.
I love it, Kim.